Viewer discretion is advised.
You hate last year's epic collapse? Did you want to die after finishing under 500 yet again? Don't worry, because you now have 400 million reasons not to! It's the slow winter of discontent in the city of brotherly love. Ownership and the fanbase alike has grown impatient with the stench of ruined tomorrow, Jr. A new mark has to be made. The shopping spree would begin. Let's start ourselves off in the reliever aisle with David Robertson. The former MVP section for a little Andrew McCutchen. Here's the West Coast Island for a nice Gene Segura. The Miami liquidation got them this mint condition JT Real Muto, but they need icing on the cake. Something to assert themselves. Oh my god, that's it. Bryce Harper, the face of their revival. What's the price tag here? An extra crack of the Liberty Bell? Fine, it's worth it. The time is theirs to secure the NL East. Please? Unfortunately, this is why you now have 400 million reasons to die. David Robertson gets injured in April, never returns. Andrew McCutchen ended up getting recalled due to a torn ACL. Thank Gene Segura for not running out of pop-up. Jake Arrieta's not only alleged of PED usage in a past life, he's also alleged of not being a pitcher. Michael Franco shows up, like, once every 10 games. Odubel Herrera decided the only thing he liked hitting are women. Rhys Hoskins just doesn't like hitting anything. Remember how much Hector Neris sucked? Good news, he's your best reliever and still sketchy as hell. Gabe Kapler too smart for his own good. Or at least you would think. Hiring a pitching coach with no experience coaching pitchers. Bullpen and lineup management done to the logic of your computer overlords. This apparently includes giving a regular role to Sean Rodriguez. The computer's AI is probably Charlie Manuel. By the way, say hi to your new hitting coach. As for the Golden Goose Bryce Harper, well, he's alright. Decent numbers, not a total liability on the field. Here's the problem. You don't pay $330 million for alright. Dude only had about 2 clutch hits all year. Here's one of them. Let's take a live look at Phillies management reacting to this team's destruction. This is why you don't forget about the pitching when making those moves. 4th place in the NL East. A bitter disappointment of a season. Even better, there's still a good chance they won't finish over 500. Want to not suck the life out of your fans? How about not losing to Miami so frequently? Look out, here comes the anti-clutch! We're as disappointed as you are, JT. We can only hope people are fired, but probably not. Tune in next year when the Phillies learn absolutely nothing and throw a shitload of money at Garrett Cole and Anthony Rendon. And then see someone like Carlos Santana return to form on a different team. I mean, it's not a Philly issue.
Base hit! Haggerty to third. He's being waved around. Dickerson makes the throw to the plate. Not in time. The Mets have the lead.
Oh, wait, it is.
The goddamn Phillies. Remember the early 90s when the vet was known as Little Shea and Ricky Jordan was your best player? In 1964, you had an epic collapse where you lost 10 games in a row and lost the pennant. And of course, Wild Thing serving up this cookie to Joe Carter ought to hurt. Smoking is banned entirely in and around this ballpark, which I can appreciate. A lot of the grounds are dedicated to Phillies legend Richie Ashburn, one of the most underrated players of all time. Ashburn Alley features attractions, restaurants, and a statue of the Hall of Fame outfielder. Before the stock market crash spiraled the country into Great Depression, the Phillies got a little taste of sadness, and America would later become the Detroit Lions. In front of their home fans, they yielded 28 runs, 20 of which came in 2 separate 10-run innings. Jim Bottomley led the charge with a home run and 7 RBI. Neither Claude Willoughby, the starter, nor the first reliever Elmer Miller recorded an out. The mascot that broke the mold, the Phillie Phanatic along with the San Diego Chicken are probably the best known mascots in all of sports. Both their costumes are on display in the National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. The Phanatic is known for a variety of bits, taunting the opposing team, standing on the dugout, riding an ATV, playing pranks, buffing the heads of bald fans like myself. He's been on The Simpsons, Letterman, and in commercials. He was denied an appearance on It's Always Sunny because the MLB wouldn't let him. Instead, they called him the Frenetic. Apparently, Gritty and the Phanatic are friends. God help us all. Though we all suspect the '93 Phillies were more juiced than a pineapple factory in Brazil, a especially since they were catalyzed by such a pillar of honesty in the form of Lenny Dykstra. It was pitcher Kevin Gross who was popped for using sandpaper in his glove during the 1987 season. I'm also sure the garden of used chewing tobacco nails used to grow out in center field at the Vet was disgusting to opposing players in a manner more frightening than his investment portfolio. The first stadium ever to have a jail inside of it for when rowdy fans booed Santa Claus and tossed batteries. Veterans Stadium served Philadelphians with all the alcohol and drunken public citations they could handle. Demolished in 2004 in 62 seconds, faster than T.O. and McNabb's relationship deteriorated, it is now a giant parking lot next to Citizens Bank Park. Though Shibe Park had a long and storied history as both a football and baseball field, what it has become is also intriguing. In use for over 62 baseball seasons, the park was closed in 1970 as former Eagles owner Jerry Woolman was in bankruptcy, so the ground sat rotting until 1991, when Deliverance Evangelistic Church bought the property and converted the grounds into a 5,100-seat mega church. The engineering gods show no mercy. Amen. Seriously, you named the field after that failed barn that's buried in the Citizens Bank parking lot? The Spectrum? I do give some leniency to this field as it was completely flooded out in 2012 by Tropical Storm Debbie, and I like how its dimensions mirror that of the big park, but overall I find it average. You ever try to fit a square peg into a round hole? Proposed on the site of the now demolished Veterans Stadium, this dual facility is actually not bad looking. However, it succumbed to the cheaper concrete donut style aforementioned stadium. A roof plan was also included, making the place look like a giant basketball arena or similar to the Alamo Dome. The plan was scrapped in 1968, but now Citizens Bank Park has similar angles and architecture. An homage to the classic jewel box style ballparks of the early 1900s, Citizens Bank features a sharp, angular design that is a welcome departure from the standard over-computerized look of other retro classic ballparks. I like the roofing element, and the park is a remarkable execution of a closed-in, planned stadium complex. And good job to Philly for cleaning up the south side. It used to be rough down there in the old days of the Vet. I still hate the Phillies, though.
Philadelphia Phillies. The Phillies had a great run from 2007 to 2011, where they won the division each year, won 2 pennants, and a World Series. But outside those 5 years, the last 40 years have been largely terrible. They haven't made the playoffs in 10 years. Chase Utley was a dirty player and wore too much hair gel. The best player to ever wear a Phillies uniform, Mike Schmidt, looks like a 70s porn star and thinks players can't lead a team unless they speak English. Philly fanatic, Philadelphia Phillies. He has a pocket pussy for a nose, and he looks like an alien, but there's no denying the Philly fanatic is the best mascot in the sport of baseball. Sure, he most likely has high blood pressure and terrible cholesterol due to being morbidly obese, but he still goes out there every game and gives people a show, knowing he could die of a heart attack at any moment. That's what a fucking hero looks like. Grade A.
In 2008, the Philadelphia Phillies won the World Series, a triumph for their home city, which had suffered so much heartbreak and hadn't claimed a major pro sports title in decades. Literally the day after the championship parade, Phillies fixture Ruben Amaro Jr. got promoted to GM. Amaro assumed the task of preserving the world-class talent available to manager Charlie Manuel. And he did, cost be damned. The Phillies fell short in the 2009 World Series and lost a heartbreaking 2010 NLCS. But they kept piling onto their win total and reached new heights in 2011. That season, Philadelphia won 102 games, the best ever record for a franchise over a century old. Baseball's premier team centered around the mound, with one of the greatest pitching rotations ever, truly ever. Left-hander Cole Hamels had been Philly's 2008 World Series MVP. Hamels kept right on dealing, but now he was just one of the so-called 4 aces. Another lefty, Cliff Lee, got hustled out the door to make room for veteran Roy Halladay, who earned Cy Young honors in 2010. Another Roy Oswalt, arrived by trade following his excellent decade with the Houston Astros. Then, Lee came right back for 2011. Makes you wonder why they got rid of him in the first place, but still, 4 damn aces. Even the 5th starter, Vance Worley, pitched quite well for a rookie. With that rotation, the Philly lineup didn't need to rake, but they had weapons. Much of the 08 squad remained, including some former MVPs, like 06 winner Ryan Howard, who had just signed a record-setting 5-year contract extension set to begin in 2012. 07 MVP Jimmy Rollins, who'd worn red for over a decade. His infield neighbor, Chase Utley, nearly as accomplished and just as beloved. Those 3 were in their 30s, all just starting to see their numbers dip below All-Star caliber. They formed the heart of the lineup with some even older guys, veteran mercenaries hunting a ring, Raul Ibanez and Placido Polanco, plus a couple more holdovers, clutch performers from 08, fan favorite Shane Victorino, clubhouse leader Carlos Ruiz. And to replace Jason Worth, who left for the hated Washington Nationals, the Phillies dealt multiple prospects for a midseason acquisition, rangy all-star outfielder Hunter Pence. This was a pricey roster. That is the cost of a win-now approach. Philadelphia held the league's best record even after a September losing streak. They entered the postseason a betting favorite and got past a surprise Game 2 defeat to claim a 2-1 NLDS lead over the St. Louis Cardinals. The Phillies were winning. Now. Until October 2011. Game 4 at St. Louis, a potential series clincher for the Phillies, win and advance. Things looked good early. Rollins, Utley, and Pence attacked in the first inning to hand Roy Oswalt a 2-0 lead. But the 34-year-old Oswalt had been the flakiest of the 4 aces, and he met his match in St. Louis's David Freese, who drove in 4 Cardinal runs to flip the game and tie the series. Freese's first huge game in what would become a legendary playoff run. The decisive Game 5 returned to Citizens Bank Park, and this time, Philly had perhaps their most reliable 2011 ace on the mound. Roy Halladay immediately gave up a run, but dominated from there to hold the Cards to 1 until closer Ryan Madsen finished them off in the 9th. Job well done from the mound. Just one problem. St. Louis's Chris Carpenter was even better. In a do-or-die game, Carpenter vexed the whole Philly lineup. Well, everyone but Shane Victorino. Still, with only that single run against them, all the Phillies needed was one break, one Carpenter mistake, one critical swing. With 2 outs in the bottom of the 9th, in front of 47,000 desperate fans, Ryan Howard took that swing. It could not have gone worse. With a 2-2 count, the camera followed Howard's ground ball as it bounced harmlessly into the final out. And then it found a much scarier scene. Howard writhing in the grass. He hadn't even made it to first base. On the final out of Philadelphia's shocking upset defeat, their former MVP, the star about to become the highest paid Philly in history, tore his Achilles tendon. So that's a lot of news at once. Not only did the World Series favorite fall to a team that barely clinched a playoff berth, their big-ticket star would definitely miss a chunk of the next season, the first of his huge contract extension. To this point, the GM, Amaro, had been aggressive. The Phillies gradually depleted their prospect pool to hoard stars. Their 2011 payroll of over $170 million ranked second behind only the Yankees, almost double what Philly had paid the 08 champions. And that's before the Howard extension kicked in. The Phillies felt pot committed and kept pushing. They actually increased payroll in 2012. They didn't retain almost 40-year-old Raul Ibanez, but they did bring in a guy in his 40s, Jim Thome. They didn't retain the fading Oswalt, but they did shell out big cash and a draft pick to sign a new big name, closer Jonathan Papelbon. Instead of bolstering more historic pitching excellence, Papelbon pitched a solid season surrounded by disappointment. That star-packed roster began to sour. Right around his 35th birthday, Roy Halladay's shoulder and back acted up. He missed time and didn't really return to form. Cliff Lee, too, had a rocky season by his standards and didn't find his footing until too late. And while legendary pitching regressed to merely good, the offense suffered setbacks it could not afford. Howard ended up missing the first half of the season repairing his Achilles, and critically, Utley missed almost the exact same stretch because of chronic knee issues. The shorthanded Phillies limped out of the gates. They posted a losing record in April, barely gained ground in May, then crumpled for real in June when Halladay hit the DL. Utley and Howard finally debuted mid-summer, but they didn't bring much juice, and the front office started to bail. They traded Hunter Pence for prospects, none of whom would amount to much. They traded Shane Victorino for prospects, none of whom would amount to much. The Phillies rallied late in the season, but blew their momentum out the window with some truly stupid results. The second priciest team in all of baseball missed their first postseason since 2006. So now what? Even after those trades, the Phillies had plenty salary on the books. Improving from within didn't look promising. The Phillies farm system had sacrificed to feed the win now mindset, and the best remaining guys weren't panning out. Rankings of Phillies' talent base plummeted. Meanwhile, some NL East rivals, the Nationals and the Braves, were on the rise. Danger loomed, and it was fair to wonder if longtime manager Charlie Manuel might pay the price for another finish behind those divisional neighbors. Manuel sounded like he felt that. He knew the Phillies and his job security had an uphill battle. His lineup was kinda caught between future and present. Phillies started to lean more on a younger outfield, but also brought in some high-profile bats named Young. Delman Young and 36-year-old third baseman Michael Young, who replaced the prior 36-year-old third baseman, Polanco. Most of the old reliables just weren't reliable anymore. Rollins no longer looked like himself. Howard's post-Achilles era wasn't going great, and Halladay kept struggling after shoulder surgery. Carlos Ruiz had been his peak self in 2012, but missed a bunch of 2013 because of a suspension for taking some Adderall. Even Cole Hamels, fresh off a big extension of his own, started the season in a funk. The Phillies stayed competitive for a couple months, but young Ben Revere broke his foot, and Philadelphia flopped out of the 2013 All-Star break. In mid-August, as predicted, they fired Charlie Manuel, the winningest manager in franchise history. This was a devastating blow. The longtime Phillies stars felt like they'd failed someone they considered a father figure. He wasn't the one out there losing games. While Ryan Sandberg struggled to right the ship, Amaro no longer had a fall guy. Media and fans directed their ire at the GM for his habit of bleeding cash and prospects to chase names. Philadelphia finished 2013 with their first losing record in over a decade. But Amaro had job security and didn't exactly modify his approach. Halladay retired at season's end, so Amaro threw big money at an even older pitcher, A.J. Burnett, who pitched the worst season of his career as a 2014 Philly. The lineup received similar investment. 35-year-old Carlos Ruiz got paid to stick around. 36-year-old former Philly Marlon Byrd got paid to come back aboard. Just kind of spinning wheels in the big leagues while trying to restock the farm system. And indeed, the Phillies treaded water, following a 73-win 2013 with a 73-win 2014. It was hard to watch. And just for a little added flavor, this lost year included Rollins not exactly getting along with his new manager, Sandberg. Everyone spent the season dancing around Rollins' trade rumors, and then at season's end, Amaro did the deed. A stinky end to a 15-year Philly career, one of the best ever. Phillies fans entered 2015 prepared for rock bottom, and they found it. Before the season, Cliff Lee suffered an injury that would ultimately end his career. The season itself produced some truly humiliating baseball. Papelbon got fed up, demanded a trade, and got his wish. Some remaining heroes from the 08 core didn't even have to ask for trades. Cole Hamels gave Philly one last no-hitter, then got dealt to Texas. It sounded like Chase Utley might hang around through year's end until it didn't. He went to the Dodgers. Amaro was finally, truly steering into a proper rebuild, but he wouldn't be around for the next phase. A GM often ranked among the worst in baseball lost his job at the end of the 2015 season. New leadership finished the job, trading Ruiz and declining the option on Howard's notorious contract. That same leadership inherited a regenerating farm system and some draft opportunities, and they more or less descended into tanking with nothing to show for it by the end of the decade when new guys took over. It's not easy to rebuild. Reflecting on his tenure, Ruben Amaro Jr. mostly regrets his timing, swapping out Cliff Lee for Roy Halladay only to reacquire Lee the next year delayed the four aces. Beyond that, Amaro wishes he transitioned into a rebuild sooner and gleaned more from analytics. Critics really went after him for that during those years the Phillies kept chasing names. Maintaining a champion is tough. The Phillies arguably succeeded at that task after their 08 World Series, but that project hit an acute disaster in 2011. Rarely does one moment so completely derail a franchise's present and future. The Phillies just didn't know how to respond. It's good to spend big in baseball. There's no salary cap. But there is still such a thing as wasted money. And the Phillies mistook their fading core for a viable one, mistook big names for helpful ones, and depleted their base all the while. They kept building on a fracturing foundation until the whole thing collapsed.